Good afternoon, YouTube. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about the utility of regularly lifting 90% of your 1 rep max. So when it comes to the training philosophy of power building, it means strength training and bodybuilding being combined. So there are different ways that this comes into practicality and how it's used. And the way I like to describe it is there are some who are power lifters who want to look big, look good, look massive. And then there are bodybuilders who want to be strong. Whenever I have a client, I make sure to ask this question: which one are you? Are you a bodybuilder who wants to be strong? Or are you a power lifter who wants to look big? Because or who wants to look good, I should say, because you're gonna get big with powerlifting, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to look good. You're not going to have the best aesthetics, to use that word unironically and ironically at the same time, however you can manage that. But when you are pursuing power building, it's important to understand the distinction between the two, because when you have to make these certain training decisions, when you have this guiding principle or this guiding identity of I am a power lifter who wants to look good, then you know that if you have to make a decision that favors more strength or more bodybuilding, then you're going to make the decision that is going to orient you towards better strength gains. If you were a bodybuilder who wants to look, or if you are a bodybuilder who wants to be strong, your priority is bodybuilding. You don't want to neglect bodybuilding. So if you have to make a decision where your bodybuilding will suffer as a result of you pursuing strength, you are not going to make that decision. You're going to make a decision that serves your bodybuilding better, but still has some element or some component of strength development. That is the key distinction between these two things. Now, there was a concept that I feel needs to be almost defended, for a lack of better words, mainly because I feel like it's something that is not really fully understood by a wide variety of people. And it's not so much that this is the gospel or that this is the truth or the way in the life, essentially. It is not by any means of that at all. It is more so that it's just an idea that I feel deserves a little bit more respect and understanding when it comes to strength training, because it's an idea that I have found personally useful, that many other people have found personally useful, and is something that is present in other people's programming. Now, this should just mean that it deserves its spot at the table, not that it should deserve a seat at the top of the table. It's kind of like the knights of the round, like the reason why the table is round is because none of the knights are lord over the others, so it's kind of like a training principle, training philosophy, training mechanism that is equal in its utility to other more established forms of training. That's what this is about. So, and this is about the idea of using regularly lifting. I suck at saying that word. Regularly lifting more than 90% of your max, or not more. Regularly lifting exactly 90% of your 1 rep max. Sorry, I'm like fumbling the words all over. But anyway, I was watching a video reviewing a program made by a very popular powerlifter, champion powerlifter, and this channel prioritizes and mainly creates program review content. He is very well educated. He has a wide variety of credentials, and that is good. It's good to have people who have a variety of education and experience when it comes to critiquing reviews and just generally increasing the fitness IQ that currently exists on YouTube Fitness. So this is good. Like, this is not an attack on that person or an attack of their opinions, but it's just more so something that they said that kind of did ignite this desire for me to create this video. And that is his point that in the program that he was reviewing, he said that it doesn't follow traditional models of progressive overload. And in my opinion, that's kind of like this gatekeeping of what strength training should and should not be. Because the thing is, if you were to look at the wide variety of strength training protocols that exist out there in the world, you're going to find a lot that don't necessarily go the same way that they all do. There's step loading, wave loading. There is the conjugate method, which has been shown time and time again to be efficient. The use of the max effort method, which I think is the essential crown jewel of that training methodology, as well as the rotation of exercises. These are things that are all essentially sitting at the round table and should have their piece when it comes to the development of strength. Now, here he was saying that because you are starting out lifting 90% of your 1 rep max on week 1, and then you are lifting 90% of your 1 rep max again in week 2, that it's not following progressive overload, therefore it's not useful for strength. Now, here's kind of my point to kind of debunk that. For one, the program was using something akin to the max effort method, and if you listen to other proponents of conjugates such as Matt Wenning, who says that one of his mentors recommended to him, always go to a 9, never a 10. If you're going to do the max effort method, which is something very common in Soviet strength sport as well as old school powerlifting, if you were to use the max effort method, you go to a 9, not a 10. That's why you would go to a 90% rather than 100% of your 1 rep max. The utility of using 90% of your 1 rep max is the fact that you become much more acclimated to straining. Your form under heavier loads actually improves, meaning that your form when you start handling lighter weights is just essentially has very few errors. Once you get acclimated to the practice and the skill of doing singles, which is the sport of powerlifting, especially with higher percentages where form breakdown is more likely to occur. Form breakdown at 100% versus 90% is going to be very different. However, form breakdown at 90% is closer to what form breakdown would be like at 100% than it would be with 80%. So what I'm trying to say is, if you practice lifting with 90% of your max, you are going to become more proficient lifting heavier things, and that is a key component of strength. Strength is best expressed when you're able to maintain your form and posture underneath heavier loads. Now, going back to the point that he made saying that it's not a traditional model of progressive overload. In the video where he's critiquing this program, he also says that the only thing that changes is sets and reps. And for me, one thing you'll know that about my many models of progression is that there's a wide variety of things that you can do to progress in your training, and the biggest and the simplest is just tonnage. Tonnage is sets times reps times weight. If weight is a constant and sets and reps change over time, that is progressive overload, because over time your tonnage is progressively increasing. How is that not progressive overload? So this kind of idea that 90% of your max is just something that is frowned upon and not good for strength development couldn't be further from the truth, because if 90% is something that starts out as it's not something you're comfortable lifting, it's something that you actively stay away from and actively have to peak to all the time, I would argue that you are not actually getting stronger. You are just getting better at lifting lighter things, and that is not a definition of strength. And I know that you do need to kind of establish a base of strength with lighter weights, and that is a key component of strength training. However, being able to replicate an effort, especially when it's still sub-maximal, 90% is still a very doable thing on a regular basis. Many lifters have done it very successfully, especially the lifter who created the program that you are critiquing. The next thing, with lifters who follow conjugate style training, they do go to a 9 RPE essentially, or 90% of their max if they choose to be more percentage based. Lifters like Alpha Destiny, who has just achieved a 405 bench press, has been using a max effort method system to get to that point, and he is a fan of Matt Wenning as well, so I don't think that it's far off to assume that he does something similar where it's just 90% of his max, a RPE 9, one rep left in the tank. And one of the things that he's advocated over time is something akin to 3 sets of 1 at 90%. You get better at lifting at 90%, then you back off, do more work at lighter percentages because you're able to do more work. It's not just pump work, it's that base building that I mentioned earlier, but at the same time, you're also getting acclimated to lifting 90% of your max, which is much closer to your max, much closer to weights that would make your form break down, but because you have that level of confidence and comfort and competence with higher percentages, you don't have to worry about that as much anymore. So for me, one thing that is kind of blessing as a result of following these types of progression models that have advocated for lifting at 90% of your max is the fact that my form breakdown at heavier percentages is very, very slight. Like, I do record my sets, I do record my training, and when I look at my max effort pulls, or max effort pulls because, like I said, it's usually 1 to 3 reps, 90% of my max at most, my form at 90% versus my form at 60% is exactly the same. But some lifters who just don't get enough practice with those heavy weights can't say the same. I see it all the time. And it's something that I feel like should be addressed as a useful tool. If you're just doing sets of one, if you are just going to a daily 1 rep max essentially, or 1 rep shy of your max, if you're doing a variation, it's something that I believe to be extremely valid, and also it primes your nervous system. So once you go down, back down into those lighter percentages and do your rep work to build your base, you are actually more neurologically ready, and it becomes easier to do your rep work. So that is my essential defense of the concept of using 90% of your 1 rep max regularly into your training. And if you are lifting 90% of your 1 rep max, keeping sets and reps and weight constant is probably a good idea, because where are you going to go? Like, are you going to, or is it reasonable to very quickly lift 90% of your 1 rep max, which is still something that you probably could only lift 1 to 3 reps with, and then try to go very quickly into doing doubles, triples, fives, sixes, or anything of that nature? Hell no. Are you going to go from 3 sets of 5 to 1 set of 5, or 3 sets of 1 then 5 sets of 1, because that's actually a pretty good increase in tonnage, and that's more reasonable, but you're still lifting just 1 rep, but you're doing more reps over time because you're doing more sets. So when these things are, because like you can't really progress all that much with 90%. Like, let's say you're not going to go from doing it for 4 reps to 8 reps. You're not going to do that. You're not going to go from 3 reps to 6 reps within this, within the span of a month or 1 mesocycle. You're not going to do that. So that's why it's better to have it be something that's just slowly progressing, or just be very constant, because you're still going to have that level of comfort, you're still going to have that level of competence, you're still going to have that level of strength, but the rest of the program fills in that base, fills in that need for more traditional models of progressive overload. That's what the rest of the program is for. The reason why you want to keep 90% of your 1 rep max into the training, in my opinion, is to stay neurologically involved. It's to keep your form crisp and pristine. It's so that way your strength actually maintains itself across time. Like, this is just something that I have noticed for myself, and it's also not as demanding as people would think. If they actually just give it a try, do it very regularly, especially since most people are novice to intermediate, I think that's actually very beneficial to just go to 90% of your max and then fill in the rest of your program with that base building work. So I'm gonna cut it off there. That's it for this video. I just wanted to talk about why it's important, because it's something that I feel like if people get this wrong impression of why it's done, or this wrong impression that it's useless, it's not beneficial, it's not necessary, I think that's just a incredibly like disingenuous and dishonest perspective, because everything has value, everything has some level of truth to it. The only thing that I feel that should be discussed is the essential pros and cons of what it does, and and when it could and when it should and shouldn't be used. Now, to say that something is entirely bad just because it doesn't follow traditional forms of progressive overload, I think is just an oversimplification of a practical method, and that's why I feel like it's best to kind of give this other flip side to it, in case my viewers watch that video, because it is talking about power building, and I just want people to understand things as tools. Is it the right tool for you at the moment? If it is, then it shouldn't be something that someone, you know, who has all these credentials and says, oh, but don't do it, you should follow something else. But then what you need is that goddamn tool. But then for someone else, it's like, they are interested in this, they want to use that tool, but it's not necessary for what they're trying to build at the moment, then it's not something that they should be touching or playing with. That's kind of how I want to orient your thought process when it comes to pieces of information. How could it be used for you? Is it something that is relevant to be used for you in the current moment? These are things that are worthwhile. It shouldn't be this blanket statement of, oh, because it's not traditional, because it's not what is usually recommended, therefore it is useless. That's kind of the point of this video. I hope I got that point across beyond just the defense of lifting at 90% of your max, because I truly believe in the utility of it if your goal is strength. Like, be sure to include that caveat into this discussion. If your goal is strength, lifting at 90% of your max is a very useful tool. It's not the only way, it's not the gospel, it's not gospel truth, but it is a useful tool that I feel like deserves a better amount of respect from those who have all this education and credentials, essentially. So that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Carl the King, StanStrength.com, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.